Why victims don't leave. The psychology behind dangerous relationships. After almost every true crime case involving domestic violence, one question appears again and again. Why didn't they just leave? It's asked by commentators, by strangers online, sometimes even by people close to the victim. But this question is built on a misunderstanding. Leaving a dangerous relationship is rarely simple. Often, it is complex, frightening, and at times life-threatening. Today's episode is not about judgment. It is about understanding. Using patterns seen across real criminal cases, survivor testimonies, and psychological research, we are going to explore why victims don't leave dangerous relationships and why asking the right questions matters. Because understanding saves lives. Section 1. Fear is not irrational. It's informed. One of the biggest misconceptions is that victims stay because they are not afraid. In reality, many stay because they are afraid. In countless domestic homicide cases, investigators later confirm that violence escalated after the victim tried to leave. Victims often know instinctively, or through experience, that leaving can trigger stalking, retaliation, escalating threats, physical harm. In relationships marked by control and abuse, fear is not weakness. It is a survival response. For many victims, staying feels safer than leaving, at least temporarily. Section 2. The most dangerous time is when they try to leave. This is one of the most consistent findings in domestic violence research and true crime investigations. The risk of severe violence or homicide increases significantly after separation. This pattern appears in cases like Nicole Brown Simpson, Laci Peterson, numerous lesser-known domestic homicide cases. When control is lost, dangerous partners may escalate. Victims often delay leaving, not because they don't want to, but because they are waiting for a safer opportunity, financial stability, support systems, a moment when risk feels lower. Leaving is not a single moment. It is often a process. Section 3. Psychological control and trauma bonding. Many victims don't leave because they are psychologically trapped long before they are physically harmed. This is known as trauma bonding. Trauma bonding forms when abuse is mixed with affection, fear is followed by apology, violence is followed by remorse. This cycle creates confusion. Victims may believe, "They're not always like this. It was my fault. They'll change." In real cases, abusers often show remorse after violence, not to change, but to reset control. The brain begins to associate relief with reconciliation, reinforcing the bond. This is not love, it is conditioning. Section 4. Financial dependence and practical barriers. In many dangerous relationships, victims are financially trapped. Common barriers include shared bank accounts, no access to money, dependence on housing, children to care for. In true crime investigations, it is common to discover that victims had no private funds, lacked transportation, were isolated from employment. Leaving requires resources. Without them, the risk of homelessness, poverty, or losing children may feel just as threatening as staying. For many victims, the question is not, "Why don't you leave?" It is, "Where would you go?" Section 5. Isolation and loss of support. Abusive relationships often cut victims off from support systems long before violence becomes visible. Over time, friends drift away. Family communication decreases. Shame prevents disclosure. Victims may feel embarrassed, afraid of being judged, convinced no one will believe them. In many cases, victims attempted to speak up, but were minimized, dismissed, or misunderstood. Isolation makes leaving feel impossible. When no one knows the full story, the victim carries the burden alone. Section 6. Gaslighting and self-doubt. Gaslighting is one of the most damaging psychological tools used in dangerous relationships. It causes victims to doubt their memory, their judgment, their perception of reality. They may hear, "You're overreacting. That never happened. You're too sensitive. Over time, victims stop trusting themselves. In true crime cases, victims are often described as anxious, confused, or indecisive, when in reality, their confidence has been systematically dismantled. When you no longer trust your own mind, making a life-changing decision like leaving becomes overwhelming. Section 7. Hope and the belief that change is possible. Hope is one of the most misunderstood reasons victims stay. Many believe love will fix the problem. Time will make things better. Commitment will bring stability. In some cases, abusers promise therapy, change, sobriety, improvement. Victims are not naive for believing this. In many cases, the abuser truly does change briefly, but without accountability and sustained effort, the cycle returns. Hope keeps victims invested long after warning signs appear. Section 8. Children and protective instincts. When children are involved, leaving becomes even more complicated. Victims may fear losing custody, exposing children to retaliation, escalating violence during separation. Some stay because they believe staying maintains stability. Leaving could make things worse. In tragic cases, investigators later learn that victims stayed in an attempt to protect their children until protection became impossible. The decision is rarely selfish. It is often deeply sacrificial. Section 9. Shame, stigma, and social judgment. Social narratives play a powerful role. Victims may fear being blamed, being judged, not being believed. This fear is not unfounded. Public reactions to true crime cases often focus on what victims should have done, not what they endured. Shame silences people. When society asks, "Why didn't they leave?" instead of, "Why was it unsafe to leave?" victims retreat further into isolation. Section 10. Normalization of abuse over time. One of the most dangerous aspects of long-term abusive relationships is normalization. What once felt unacceptable slowly becomes routine. Yelling becomes normal. Threats become background noise. Fear becomes daily life. In many cases, victims don't recognize how severe the situation has become because the change happened gradually. Abuse rarely begins at its worst. It escalates. Section 11. When leaving finally happens. When victims do leave, it is often after multiple attempts, careful planning, external intervention. Contrary to popular belief, many victims try to leave several times before succeeding. Each attempt carries risk. This is why support, resources, and understanding are critical, not judgment. The question should never be, why didn't they leave? The better questions are, what made leaving dangerous? What support was missing? How can we recognize the signs earlier? True crime stories should not end with blame. They should end with learning. Understanding why victims don't leave helps us recognize danger sooner, support survivors better, prevent future tragedies. This has been a True Crime Help narrative. If you value content that explores the human realities behind real crimes, consider subscribing to True Crime Narratives. Stay aware, stay compassionate, and stay informed.